Hey guys, Krevin here. I'm originally a Total War gamer, but with Total War's latest release of the Warhammer title, I've been getting into Warhammer lore quite a bit. And of all the factions whose lore I've been learning about recently, I find Skaven to be the most interesting race and faction in Total War that I have yet come across, at least for now. So I thought I'd make this video to share with you guys some of the immersion I've been receiving from the Total War lore, which I think is so cool that there's such a storied history. This is just going to be a basic overview of some of the faction, the social structure, and what it looks like to be a Skaven in Skaven Blight. I'll be releasing further videos if you guys want that on the 4 great clans, possibly down the road. But for now, let's just jump in, learn a bit about the Skaven as a faction and as a social group, and who they are in Total War Warhammer when we eventually get them, which I believe we will in the near future. So let's dive right in. So if you're like me when I was first getting into the Warhammer fantasy universe, you're wondering what are the Skaven? Well, you can kind of tell what they look like by these pictures that you're seeing, but they're basically rat men. They stand 4 to 5 feet usually, so a little bit smaller than humans, although some can be over 6 feet when they're standing on their hind legs. Fur covers their bodies except for their ears, muzzles, hands, and their rat tails. Fur color can indicate a Skaven's role in their society. Most Skaven are brown or piebald. White or gray is rare and indicates leadership, intelligence, and especially sorceress ability. Those with black or dark brown fur tend to be the largest, and the color is considered a mark of a born killer, and most dark-furred Skaven become elite warriors or assassins. Skavens can be twitchy, agitated creatures. Their metabolism allows them to burn energy at an incredible rate, boosting their agility and speed to unnatural levels, so they're much faster, much stronger than a typical human. This effect also gives them an enormous hunger though, which after heavy exertion can be so bad that the Skaven visibly weakens and dies. As a result, Skaven will feast on the dead of either side after a battle. Female Skaven are rare and at most semi-intelligent, but are capable of giving birth to huge litters very frequently. This means that the Skaven are probably the most numerous of all the races in Warhammer, especially considering that their settlements pretty much extend throughout all of the major regions in the Warhammer universe by the End Times lore, but that's a whole nother topic. So let's talk about where the Skaven are coming from now. And nobody really knows where the Skaven come from. There's very little known about their origins. However, it is probable that they were created in the ancient city of Kavzar. I believe that's around Astalia on the map. Again, I'm not so strong on that, but I think that's where. Maybe if you know in the comments, you can let me know. But I believe that's the area of Kavzar. But Kavzar no longer exists because they were in the midst of building a temple when a mysterious guy basically showed up and offered to complete their temple within something like a day. So they said, yeah, sure, we're down for that. And he said, one thing, you gotta hang a bell at the top of the tower. So they said, okay, and no big deal, that's actually kind of a perk. And when he did, the night after the tower was finished, the bell rang 13 times, not 12 like the normal midnight toll, as you may have just noticed. So basically when that happened, lightning lit up the sky, dark storm clouds gathered, and as the weeks went on, it started raining and it never stopped. And the vermin in the city started growing bigger and bolder until they overwhelmed the inhabitants of the city. So over the next 280 or so years, the newly born Skaven race grew rapidly. There was pressure to expand the tunnels under the city as the surface world was too dangerous for the Skaven. Eventually they began to work on a huge device that they thought would open up large rifts beneath the ground for the Skaven to inhabit. Unfortunately for them, the great warpstone power machine wound up failing, but that's a whole nother topic with the warpstone, and we'll come to that. So now you know what the Skaven look like and where they live and the kind of rough backstory of their origin. Let's get into a little bit about how they organize themselves as a society. So Skaven society is divided into thousands of different Skaven clans, all of which are subject to the authority of the Council of 13, which is kind of like their governing body. It's not particularly powerful of its own. I mean, they're very powerful, but they can kind of just push Skavendom kind of in the direction they want to go. It's very unreliable. There's lots of backstabbing and corruption, as you will see. But the great clans, there are 4 of those, are highly specialized and have become an established part of the greater hierarchy of Skavendom. This is the warlord clans, on the other hand, are innumerable and expendable. They also have a role in the greater scheme of things. And the clan rats of the warlord clans make up most of the warriors in the army of the Skaven, with the great clans lending their specialized troops, armaments, support. So warlord clans have a definite hierarchy, although the positions are in no way fixed. Skaven advance as far as their cunning, ruthlessness, treachery, ambition, and strength take them. Skaven within the clan constantly struggle to ascend, as well as to defend their position from would-be usurpers. At the very peak of each clan is a warlord. In some of the larger clans, there will then be a second rank of lesser warlords, and the next level is formed by the chieftains, followed by a warrior class composed of clan rats and the elite storm vermin. At the very bottom of the Skaven society, and kind of running the entire machine, are the masses of the Skaven slaves. So that's a lot of information. Basically, you got the Council of 13 as the governing body. You got the 4 great clans, which are kind of pillars of Skaven society and are very specialized in what they do. And each one deserves kind of a mini video. I don't know how, I'm not going to go into too much depth on them particularly. I want you to get a good idea of what the Skaven society and like what their religion is in this video. And then if you guys like it, I'll go on to some more in-depth videos on each of the 4 great clans. But then beneath those, you have countless other clans, which are run by warlords. So that's where we're at right now. The warlords have those chieftains and whatnot. Below them, they have lieutenants, and then clan rats. And then beneath the clan rats, you have the Skaven slaves, which play a really big part of society. All right, so now that we've condensed that, let's take a look at what it looks like to be part of a regular warlord clan. So the bulk of, they're kind of called the verminous clans, every clan that's not a great clan. They're formed of petty overlords and teeming hordes beyond count, really. A big thing to get with the Skaven is just they're numberless. They're absolutely numberless, and life values absolutely not at all. Like, there's no value to life because there's just so many Skaven. It's a huge part of their battle tactics. We'll get into it. But a Thrall clan is a warlord clan which has pledged its allegiance to one of the 4 great clans. At the top is a Skaven warlord in a clan who intimidates everyone through threats and punishment while rewarding faithful followers. He also keeps an ever watchful eye on their progress, and disloyal behavior and incompetence are punished mercilessly. It's really, there's no room to mess up. If a warlord thinks you're coming after him, he's gonna crush you right away. Treachery is just the way that they live. The lieutenants in turn dominate the underlings through the same means. Beneath the captains of the Skaven forces run the mass makeup of the clan rat. Besides forming the rank and file of every Skaven army, they are also tasked with the daily chores and tasks within a clan's warren. An ambitious clan rat, for instance, has to prove his worth. A common way to climb the social ladder is to conspire against and eventually murder one's immediate superior, thereby creating a suitable opening in the social ladder, as it were. As a consequence, all superiors have to watch their underlings carefully and try to intimidate them into fearful obedience and, let's say, remove the too ambitious ones. At the very bottom of the clan hierarchy are the innumerable Skaven slaves, which I've mentioned a couple times already. While some slaves are non-Skaven, most are Skaven, either born into slavery or captured from rival clans in a war. These are destined to never see the light of day again, as they toil their whole lives in the mines and tunnels, or are sacrificed in bloody rituals to the Horned Rat, which is the Skaven's god. Let's touch on the 4 greater clans of Skaven, just give you the characteristic that makes them such a specialized, such a powerful clan. So you have Clan Scryer. It's probably the most powerful clan in all Skavendom, and they're basically the technological savants. They provide a lot of war machines and even other inventions that help the day-to-day running of Skaven Blight and other cities. Very powerful clan. There's Clan Eshin. They're the assassins. They basically hire out to all these other clans, and especially the Council of 13 uses them a lot to quelch upcoming warlords that might, challenge their rule or something like that. There's Clan Molder. They breed war beasts, basically just huge mutated monsters that fight on the battlefield. They also, though, breed different kinds of monsters and creatures that help digging. For instance, they have their own kind of monster that helps dig Skaven tunnels, so that's useful. There's also Clan Pestilence. It spreads disease and plague, fighting against some kind of a war of attrition as you fight to keep your troops healthy from all the plague that they're spreading amongst your army. They're very dangerous, and they're definitely the most fanatical when it comes to worshiping the Horned Rat. Now that we've kind of gone over their social structure and kind of touched on the government a little bit and the 4 great clans, let's talk about their worship and their religion. What kind of defines the Skaven as a society, even more than its structure? It all kind of starts with the Horned Rat. It's known as the Great Horned Rat amongst the Skaven, and it's a deity of blight and pestilence that has recently ascended to the pantheon of dark gods. He's the only god worshipped by the Skaven. His symbol is the rough equilateral triangle, and his sacred number is 13. Get it? Kind of like the bell in Skaven Blight, ringing 13 times. He's usually depicted as a great rat with curved horns. He is a deity of chaos and longs for the destruction of civilization. Clan Pestilence, in particular, focuses itself in his aspect of bringing of disease, plague, and pestilence, as we talked about before. He represents all the Skaven are or wish to be. Undying, eternally scheming, he's cunning and patiently waits for the day of what's called the Great Ascendancy, when his children will swarm across the face of the world, devouring it from within. Entropy is his mantra, decay is his stock and trade, all things must rot, figuratively or literally, and the Horned Rat and his offspring are the worldly reality of this simple truth. It's impossible to talk about the Horned Rat or religion in general regarding the Skaven without bringing up the Grey Seers, who play a very pivotal role in the worship of the Great Horned Rat. Basically, you remember how we were talking about the colors of different rats, and that certain rats are born either being gray or white furred, and that means intelligence and sorceress adaptability being very high. Well, basically, they become the Grey Seers. They lead the messages and masses for the Horned Rat and are thought to be speaking upon his behalf. They can also be born with horns on their heads, which is seen as a mark of favor since the Horned Rat is, well, horned. They have they're one of 2 classes within Skavendom, which has the authorization of the council to use magic. It's them and the Warlock Engineers of Clan Scryer are the only 2 classes actually approved to use magic. Clan Pestilence does have some magic in the form of, well, their diseases and different kinds of things that they do with that. They do have access to spells of pestilence as well, but that isn't accessed the same way. That's kind of through their devotion to the Horned Rat. They're blessed with that. So while the Grey Seers don't really like them, they can't really speak out against them as being usurpers or heretics. So there are only ever 169 Grey Seers. That's pretty important because 13 times 13 is 169. 13 is a really holy number to the Skaven. So yeah, cool little fact there. Their leader is the Seer Lord Crittenslick, and he's a very important member of the Council of 13. Not only do they lead masses and whatnot on behalf of the Horned Rat, but they also act as ambassadors, envoys, intermediaries, and troubleshooters for the council, and in its name advise, coerce, threaten, and if truly becomes necessary, murder and even replace the warlord of a clan. So that's some Essen territory right there. So it's any Skaven warlord who refuses to obey the instructions of the council can be condemned and proclaimed a heretic to the Horned Rat by the Grey Seers. This is just the sort of excuse that any rival Skaven clan awaits to declare a sacred war on the condemned and descend upon them, taking them as Skaven slaves. So at the beginning of the video, we talked about the Skaven look and different fur colors and what that meant. So to be a potential recruit for a Grey Seer position, you need to have either white or gray fur. Now, many of these candidates wind up dying during their first year of life, and any inspiring candidate must present himself at the Temple of the Horned Rat at Skaven Blight. Once within the temple, he will face the test of death by choosing among 13 doors. 12 of these doors will lead him to the Chambers of Certain Doom, and only one will lead to the Sanctum of the Horned Rat. There he will find the Pillar of Commandments. The unwary may touch the pillar, provoking his own doom, but the wise will abase himself. Only then will he be acknowledged as a chosen by his new masters. If you're wondering what the Pillar of Commandments is, it's basically a pillar given to the Skaven by the Horned Rat with commandments on each of the 13 sides. After the Skaven passes this test, if he passes this test, he will be taught and indoctrinated and trained in the use of Warpstone, which the Grey Seers use to fuel their magic and make it more powerful. Unlike the majority of Skaven, which tend to have brown fur, as we talked about, the gray fur of the Seer stands out. They also tend to live longer than an average Skaven. This is likely a side effect of having access to better food and living conditions, besides avoiding any of the hard manual labor so common to the rest of the nation. It may also be a side effect of using Warpstone, because Warpstone mutates. The Grey Seers may in fact also be a subbreed of the Skaven. That's another train of thought. Now is a good time to talk about the Council of 13, or the Lords of Decay. There are only 12 Skaven members on the Council of 13, and guess who's in the 13th seat? Yes, the Horned Rat himself. It is left symbolically vacant for the Horned Rat. So aside from the Grey Seers, who do the will of the council and advise the council, they also use as agents Clan Eshin to a very large degree. If you remember, Clan Eshin is the Assassin's Clan. They basically use them to murder rebellious warlords or individual opponents, threats to the council. This creates a reign of fear and terror in which internal rebellions are kept to a minimum. The adepts of Clan Eshin are also vital in the Conspiracy of Silence, another plan which is enforced by the Council of 13. It's intended to hide the Skaven threat from humanity and from the Empire in particular. So if you go to the Empire and you start talking about Clan Eshin, you're not going to find anybody who's going to take you seriously, because Clan Eshin does such a great job assassinating anybody with real concrete information or proof on their existence. So that plan is going well. They call it the Conspiracy of Silence. So any ambitious Skaven may seek to become a Lord of Decay and get on the Council of 13. To fulfill this ambition, he must first touch the Pillar of Commandments, which is, we talked about it and kind of introduced it in the Grey Seers portion of the video. If he survives, he has to challenge an established member to a fight to the death. If the challenger wins, then he will become a full member of the council. Some touched the pillar and survived, but no one has been able to successfully defeat any member of the council sitting there currently in the last 200 years. So the workings of the council are very complex. Each member casts a single vote, but his respective position on the council also influences the proceedings. A simple majority seems to suffice for most occasions. So I'm going to go over real quick who's sitting in what positions on the council right now. So we have the 13th position, which is figuratively held by the Horned Rat. Then you have the first position, which is Kritislik, the Seer Lord, who's head of the Order of Grey Seers. We talked about him already a little bit. On the second position, we have Lord Nodwell, who's Lord of Clan Moors. The third position is Lord Cratch Doomclaw, Warlord of Clan Rictus. Fourth is Lord Paskrit, Warlord General of all Skavendom. The fifth is Lord Vrisk Iron Scratch, Fleet Master of Clan Scurvy. The sixth positions, Lord Gridsneck, Mancarver, Warlord of Clan Scab. The seventh and eighth positions are unknown, but are possibly Clan Morbidus and Clan Carrion. The ninth position is Lord Sneak, Night Lord of Clan Eshin. The 10th, Nurglich, Arch Plague Lord of Clan Pestilence. 11th, Verminkin, Pack Lord of Clan Molder. And 12th, Lord Morskitar, Lord Warlock of Clan Scryer. I'm sorry, my bad. So your placement and seating is pretty important in the council. The 13th position is the most important position, and that's the one which is figuratively held by the Great Horned Rat. So at the immediate right and left of the 13th position are 1 and 12, and since they are so close to the number 13th seat, they're considered the two most important positions. Then come the remaining pairs in the following order of importance: 2 and 11, 3 and 10, 4, 9, 5, 8, and finally 6 and 7, who are the furthest away and the least important. So where you're sitting on the council is pretty important. So when the council is faced with a proposal, a member may either vote in favor, against, or abstain. In the last case, or if he abstains, he vetoes the vote of his numerical counterpart. So if 1 abstains, then 12's vote no longer matters. And if 2 abstains, then 11's no longer matters, 10 abstains, 3, and on like that. So if you vote against something, then you're counted as an against vote. But if you don't want your opponent's vote to matter, and you just want to rub it in his face, or for treacherous reasons or various corrupt reasons you don't want your opponent to get his way, you can abstain. It's basically a jerk move on the council. And why they have it? Because Skaven is Skaven, and their treachery is the way of life there. This state of affairs ensures that the higher ranking members of the council usually need the support of some of the lower ranking members, and vice versa. All this leads to manipulations, bribes, rivalries, backroom deals, shady agreements, favoritism, conspiracies, resulting in simple political corruption, really. Assassination attempts among the members of the council are considered rather too crude and simply non-effective. Its members usually try to manipulate the greater circumstances to force an appropriate resolution of the council. These manipulations often involve the realms of the men and the dwarf kingdoms. Let's talk about Warpstone. Warpstone is a huge foundation in the Skaven economy and Skaven life. Basically, they're addicted to it, especially Grey Seers. The Skaven will do crazy things to get more Warpstone, including taking on Nagash. It's pretty insane. They kind of won though the first time around, but that's another lore video. What is Warpstone? It is the raw stuff of chaos. It is the ultimate magical substance, and it is greatly sought after by all different kinds of followers of chaos. What the Skaven do with it is that they have a way of grinding it, allowing it to be used in more controlled ways. While the Skaven use and rely on Warpstone, the use and possession of it is strictly forbidden by human societies, and even, I believe, by the dwarven societies. Pretty much any straight race says you cannot have it. It's extremely dangerous, extremely volatile. Clan Scryer does insane things with it. It's very mutative and just a crazy substance to work with. So you gotta be very careful around it, but the Skaven don't care about that, right? Just throw it in with some Skaven slaves, and if it doesn't kill them, maybe we'll use it on our clan rats too. And if it kills them, then oh well. So one of Clan Scryer's more successful Warpstone inventions, if you can call it that, could be the Warp Lightning Cannon. It's a very iconic Skaven unit. It makes use of a large chunk of raw Warpstone and channels the magical energy through a series of mirrors and lenses to intensify the beam. It leaves the cannon as a green lightning bolt, powerful enough in theory to shatter a mountain. It is moved, aimed, and fired by 2 Skaven slaves, and its power output is known to be very unstable and dangerous to handle, as well as difficult to properly aim. Therefore, why they use Skaven slaves, because this thing is always going wrong. You never know where it's going to hit, but when it does hit, it is absolutely destructive and can fry a giant. Can fry 3 giants. It is crazy powerful, but very unstable, which is kind of the theme. Before we talk about what it looks like when the Skaven go to war, let's talk a little bit about the capital of Skavendom, which is Skaven Blight. Let me set the picture for you. Skaven Blight, above ground, looks like a massive, blighty marsh. It would be impossible to reach the capital across the land surface, as the blighted marshes are certain death to cross. The noisome stench of sucking mud and fetid water rises high into the air, a vast and poisonous cover that prevents the full light of the sun from penetrating its gloom. Well past the swampy borders are found deep water channels where rotting slave ships, great barges the size of imperial villages made by Clan Scryer, ply along the murksome flow. Banks of oars or ingenious water turbines propel the ships through the turbid waters. Vast flotillas of Skaven slaves launch out, either swimming or mounted on small shanty crafts. They scour the reed beds for the foul crops that grow there. Overseers apply the lash as slaves struggle to make quotas before the slave ship moves on. Escape through the blighted marshes is impossible, and, as unimaginable as it sounds, the worst punishment any grain slave can suffer is to be abandoned in that stinking marsh. Closer to the swamp center, ruined towers punctuate the murky waters, the old remains of what once used to be a great city. As the banks become solid ground, there reside teeming ports where endless lines of bent-back slaves haul black corn from the banks to the factories. Enormous mill wheels of worm-eaten wood and rusted iron relentlessly chum out grain to feed the starving masses of Skaven Blight. Periodically, armed patrols sweep the lines, enforcing speed and mercilessly gathering up any who have collapsed or expired under the weighty loads. Any such unfortunates are thrown in with the crops. They are just more grist for the mill, for Skavens will eat anything. Just wanted to give you guys that as kind of the picture, the backdrop to Skaven society, what they live in. Let's move on to the actual city and what that is. It's pretty much all underground. So beyond the great granaries we talked about for the black grain, rises the outline of a great city from the mud. Clammy green-tinted mists wrap the ruins of the shattered buildings. The cracked paving stones tilting up from the deserted streets and holes in vents pockmark the rubble-strewn byways. Shadowy figures flicker and scurry amidst the crumbling ruins. The majority of Skaven Blight exists underground in unfathomable levels, caverns, and shafts. No map could ever hope to account for the many districts or the constantly changing locations of lairs, breeding pits, strongholds, all connected by an intertwining network of tunnels gnawed out between sections. The deeper levels can only be reached by cages attached to massive chains and lowered into the depths. At the center of the city is the great temple of the Horned Rat. It stretches for miles beneath the surface, but above ground is marked by the single cloud-piercing tower reaching high over the desolation. The shattered tower is a piece of madness made manifest. In places, marble white and perfect, whilst in others, decrepit and crudely patched together, masonry from many realms and eras of architecture are stacked atop each other. But for all that, it stretches upwards to impossible heights. It is the fabled Black Heart of Skavendom, about which are told many legends. The temple is the base for the Grey Seers and home to their ruler, Seer Lord Kritislik, who occupies the first seat on the Council of 13. Skaven houses an incredible number of different clans, Skaven Blight houses, I should say, from the great powers to the upstart and little-known warlord clans. All areas are packed with hordes that demand constant expansion. At the lower levels, you'll find countless Skaven slaves toiling away, out in the lower levels, out in the mud, trying to collect the black grain like we were just talking about, never to leave the mines or factories for the rest of their short and miserable lives. They are regularly worked to death and quickly replaced. Their lives mean absolutely nothing, very cheap. There's just so many. Armies of slave workers shift mountains of rock drilled out by tracked machines of immense size that burrow out new tunnels for ever-growing population. As large and impressive as Skaven Blight is, its reach is mightier still. Stone-gnawed and chiseled passages extend away from that den of despair, diving deep under the roots of the Clack Mountains and extending thousands of miles in all directions so the Grey Seers routinely travel outward, bringing their plans for supremacy to the multitude of Skaven strongholds and spy posts. There's a lot of different precincts, among them the Clan Eshin precinct, Clan Pestilence has a precinct, Clan Rictus has a precinct. They're all essentially embassies, since the major, I should say, strongholds for these clans are elsewhere. But they all have a precinct in Skaven Blight representing their interests and basically being the home for the member of the 13th council, their 13th council member when he's in Skaven Blight. So it's with the exception of the Great Temple of the Horned Rat, perhaps the most prestigious precinct of Skaven Blight are the warp forges and workshops of Clan Scryer. At one time, famed warlock engineers took control of the city, usurping whole quarters of the Undercity for their sorcerous machinery. The cathedral-sized halls are lit by glass spheres filled with lightning. Steel-wheeled carts are hauled along metal rails by tireless, smoke-belching iron beasts. Pistons, gears, and cogs, the size of houses, endlessly churn, generating power for relentless industry. All other clans resent the space, wealth, and power of Clan Scryer, but few would dare to openly defy them because they are so freaking strong. They basically own Skaven Blight to a certain extent. Clan Molder, for instance, has its base at the Hell Pit, and I might go into that. I'm gonna go into various other clans. They'll just be shorter but highly detailed videos on each clan, where it's from, each of the 4 great clans I should say, where it's from, and kind of what they bring to Skavendom. So let me know if you want that, if you're interested in that, and I will make those. But I don't think I'm going to go into too much detail on those here, just because there's a lot, and this is going to be just an overview of society. Now let's talk about the Skaven when they go to war, and what their tactics and units look like in general. It's going to be very rare for one clan to go to war. More often, a Skaven army will contain many different clans temporarily allied together to achieve some goal. The core of the army is always just a sea of clan rats and Skaven slaves, even more Skaven slaves, just tons and tons of throwaway troops. Specialized troops are going to depend on what deals the warlord of said clan is going to have with one of the great clans. For example, if the warlord got a good deal with Clan Molder, there will be a large number of giant rats or rat ogres or some kind of mutated unit in his army. On the other hand, if the warlord has made an alliance with Clan Scryer, he's going to have a lot of different weapon teams to support his clan rats and his storm vermin. Storm vermin are going to be your elite Skaven infantry. They are recruited from among young Skaven who display black fur, going back to the whole fur distinctions. During their recruitment and training, they receive better food, equipment, and training, creating superior warriors who are bigger, stronger, tougher, and braver than the typical clan rat warrior. Clan rats are usually carrying spears, like maybe a rotten shield, a couple scraps of metal if they're really lucky, while storm vermin wield deadly halberds and wear heavy armor. In battle, the storm vermin are also fighting in an organized manner and in separate units, while the clan rats fight in a mob as one big, well, I guess mob. As a warlord, you are going to be very oriented on a horde focus in your tactics. You want something like 3 lines, one with slaves, the next with the clan rats, and the third with the storm vermin. One thing about the Skaven is that they honestly don't care about loss of life on their side. There's just so many of them. This is something that needs to be incorporated in future Total War games. I'm not sure how they're going to do it with the unit size limits they've had so far in the past, but this is such a huge thing with the Skaven. Basically, you send in your slave rats, and they just soak up a ton of fire. They basically do nothing but wear down the enemy, but the enemy wastes ammunition on them. They're basically a meat shield. Then eventually they run because they have horrible morale, just like most of your infantry units, and the rest of your army doesn't even suffer a penalty in morale. In the tabletop, if slave rats retreat through one of your lines, you don't have to roll for morale or any kind of penalty or any kind of test like that, because the rest of your army just expects it. Then you send in your clan rats. Now the clan rats, like we said, no organization, bare bones like weaponry, no armor really to speak of. They go in and they're just like a slightly tougher meat shield, and they'll just wear down the enemy even more and hopefully overrun them. Or if not, and they wind up running, which is very likely because, again, horrible morale, super cowardly, then you send in your storm vermin, which are your more elite infantry, and they mop up what's left. Your tactics change subtly depending on if you have an alliance or any of the units from the other specialized great clans. That's going to be your basic strategy as a warlord of a regular vermin clan. Just hit them with your slaves and hit them with your clan rats, and then finish them off with your storm vermin. I am really looking forward to the Skaven's release, guys, and I hope you are too after watching this video. If you guys want me to tell you more about the lore of Skaven, then just let me know, and I'll be releasing future videos on the 4 major clans. If that's what you guys want, just leave a like. Make sure to comment down below if I missed something in the lore that you want to bring up, or if I got something wrong, perchance. I'm not exactly an expert, I'm relatively new to Warhammer lore. Then please just bring it up down there. It's a great place to have discussions and share what we like about this faction. What are you looking forward to most in the Total War series? Let me know down below. And thank you for watching this. I will see you guys in the next video.